What's good, you guys? C.A.S.T back on the video, and yes, I actually did pause the game to be here, as the shirt says. I was playing some Stardew Valley on my TV. I recently just finished I'm gonna show you guys my home theater PC I just built. Not really conventional to your normal style home theater PC, but I think I should give some people some good ideas for some PC builds and show you a little more of my creative side, and hopefully it gives you guys some ideas on what you could be doing as well. But yeah, Stardew Valley. This is the first time I played it, like at 60 inches, and you can see like the entire map. It's really interesting rather than having to I guess move in small different sections. You can see your small character. It's a little bit like you can lose your cursor obviously, but man, it's a whole different experience that I'm really enjoying. Now I don't usually make these tech related videos, but every so often something comes out and it kind of gets my gears turning in my mind, and something has to be said. And I think especially about this topic, something needs to be said that isn't being voiced in the tech community, specifically the PC building and PC gaming community. That I think if we bring light to this, hopefully it gives people a new perspective and keeps people from complaining, because there's just a perpetual nature for people to complain online. I guess that's like saying water is wet in some cases, but specifically with this hobby, I think it's not necessary. And yeah, let's just get into this video. The RTX 40 Super Series was launched earlier this month. Well, I guess last month, since it's technically February 1st, the time of filming this. But we had the 4070 Super, the 4070 Ti Super, um, terrible name if I'm being completely honest, and then you have the 4080 Super. Now, on paper, I personally did not have a problem with any of these graphics cards. They're essentially giving you the same tier of performance, if not slightly higher or more higher for the same price, which is, again, what the majority of, if you listen to these tech influencers and people online have been asking for. This is exactly what they would be asking for the past multiple years. I think they've finally done that, and there really shouldn't be anything to complain about. But regardless, you still see people online super jaded about these releases of these graphics cards, that they're still too expensive. They don't give you enough performance, and I just need to go ahead and say this right now, that if you're seriously complaining about the 40 Super series of launch of graphics cards, then you really need to kind of readjust your perspective on where we actually are at right now in PC gaming. Now, I can already hear people typing away in the comments section saying I'm an Nvidia shill, I'm poor shaming. None of that stuff's going on, guys. And to help prove my point, I think a picture is, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, then a video has to be worth like 1,000,000. So here's a little bit of gameplay footage. I'll tell you guys a little more about how this is going to actually apply to my argument, but it's going to play in the background just to, I guess, give you a little more ambiance. But let's continue with the video. I want everyone just to take a step back and think pragmatically about the goal of PC gaming. Why are you actually building yourself a custom rig? The goal is to have, I think, personability, be able to pick your own components here and then and show that off. And you want to build something that can be a showpiece, something that can have your stamp of approval on it. You picked every single part, what cable managed it your specific way. I really enjoy the overall building process, but I think the majority of people build PCs because they want to have fun playing the games that they want to play at a specific level. And I think for the majority of people out there, and I've said this multiple times years ago at this point, but it still applies to today. The majority of gamers out there don't need anything more than a 2070 Super or 2080 class GPU. And this is like a 2 generation old graphics card at this point, but my point still stands. Like, the majority of people don't need more than that. It's as simple as that. So when you have people saying that the 4070 Super, is not giving you enough performance at this price point, it just simply isn't true. If we actually look at the whole product stack of new graphics cards coming out right now, we have something at every single price point that will fulfill every single person's needs, and they can be easily and readily found available right now if you wanted to buy it. Now, my personal recommendation for around that $300 price point would be the 6700 XT. There's plenty of these graphics cards floating around on the new market. You can still buy them new used, I guess, if you want to get a little bit less, spend less money and get a little bit better of a deal. But for right around that 300 330 price point, you're going to be able to get yourself a really good graphics card that's going to get you anything you want at 1080p and give you really good 4040p performance as well. You might not be able to play like Alan Wake 2 or like the most cinematic games that aren't necessarily the most optimized, but pushing the graphic fidelity performance levels for next generation kind of experiences at those specific resolutions at 4040p and get like over 100 frames a second. But you still should be able to have a playable experience. We have newer technologies such as upscaling technology that's going to give you just as good fidelity but a little bit more performance. You can fine tune the settings in the settings menu to be able to get your gameplay to look just right. But the 6700 XT, 12 gigabytes of VRAM, more than enough VRAM for that specific class of GPU and how much horsepower it has. Not the most power hungry of the graphics cards. They come in relatively small sizes. They're not going to have to worry about melting connectors or anything like that as far as comparing it to like high end 4090 kind of problems. 6700 XT for $300 I think is a great brand new graphics card to buy and throw in your system to have a fantastic gaming experience, entry level but also mid range at 1440p and 1080p. Coming into the $400 to $500 price point, I would say you have the 7800 XT. You could be looking at like used 3080s, 3070 Ti's, but I think the 7800 XT probably makes the most sense for that $400 to $500 price point. 16 gigabytes of VRAM, a step above in performance in comparison to the 6700 XT. You might be able to find like a 6800 or 6800 XT for 400 to 450 going brand new if they're still floating around there on the internet. But also eBay, you could be looking to get good deals there. But having 16 gigabytes of VRAM, you're going to be able to kind of really push those resolution, the kind of fidelities at the 1440p level. You could dazzle into 4K. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that a 7800C is going to give you the best performance in 4K, but it definitely is no slouch. I think if you want to build a home theater PC and plug it in on a 4K TV at 55, 65 inches, you could buy 7800 XT, be able to play Call of Duty. You could play Warzone. You could play Cyberpunk 2077. A lot of these new AAA title games. Anything that's been released earlier than 2020, you're probably going to have plenty of fun being able to play that game at really high settings at 4K. Not the most power efficient graphics card, but definitely not super power hungry. The graphics card sizes are a little bit bigger in comparison to the 6700 XT. You're going to have some graphics cards that have really overbuilt coolers. But you can just get the Founders Edition card that is still the normal size dual slot GPU, and that's going to work perfectly fine for there. Moving up slightly a little bit more in price, you have the 4070 Super. The 4070 probably is going to drop a little bit more in price, but both those graphics cards are going from like the $550 to $700 price point depending on the model you get. I think the 4070 Super, is probably the better of the two. It really just depends on how much money you have available to invest into your GPU, because for some people, a discounted 4070 might be all that you need. 12 gigabytes of VRAM, the bandwidth might not be up to snuff compared to some people, but very power efficient. And you get the NVIDIA suite, which, again, people are going to complain about this, but this way it is right now, NVIDIA does have an advantage when it comes to the actual features set that you're actually going to be able to get to use with the graphics card. So you're able to use all the latest feature sets, frame generation, if you care about that kind of stuff, the latest DLSS, upscaling technologies, really good encoders, the CUDA support, all that kind of stuff. All the other things with NVIDIA Broadcast, if you want to get into whatever it might be. AMD has their stuff as well that's comparable and competitive, but the general consensus is that the feature set, pound for pound, blow for blow, NVIDIA has the advantage there. So if that matters to you, you can spend the money and get that graphics card, and you'll be good at that price point. And I really think the 4070 Super specifically, in a lot of cases, giving you 30, 90 levels of performance, and this graphics card is a dime a dozen online, not from a price standpoint that it's like not expensive, but a dime a dozen saying it's not hard to buy. You can go on Newegg, probably go on NVIDIA's website themselves, buy it, Best Buy, Micro Center, they're everywhere. Moving up to the $750 to like $800 price point, you have the 7900 XT, whether it's like the AIB models or it's like the more reference design. The 7900 XT is a really good graphics card. 20 gigabytes of VRAM. I think this is probably the go-to graphics card if you're just trying to get like that very similar type of experience to buying a 2080 Ti for, I think those went around like $700, or excuse me, 1080 Ti when those were brand new. A 7900 XT is going to give you a very similar experience. You're going to be able to legitimately see like a frame rate difference compared to any other graphics card you're upgrading from. Whether you've been sitting on the same graphics card like a 2080 Ti or 5700 XT or a 3070 even, you're moving up to a whole new realm of like next generation gaming, and you're getting that for under $1,000. The 7900 XT, even though I kind of dogged it at the time of the review, based on price revisions, based on driver maturation over the past year since it's been released, has really made the 7900 XT a very value-oriented card that is giving you everything that you need. And like once you get past the 7900 XT, you're really splitting hairs when it comes to like what is necessary for your specific build. But for that price point, 700 XT is right there available for you guys. Just again, go and buy it. It's sitting there waiting for you to purchase. Throw it in your system. I'm sure there's plenty of models out there that have two 8 pins or three 8 pins. Don't worry about cards melting. Might have to get a GPU support bracket, but there are smaller models that aren't really going to necessarily have those type of same struggles. Not the most power efficient, but also not the most power hungry. 20 gigabytes of VRAM is more than enough to last you for the next probably 8 years of just really good gaming, and you'll have a very high-end gaming experience for, I would say, at least the next 4 to 5 years. Not even have to worry about going in and turning on and off settings. Maybe there'll be like one release every single year that's like taxes your system, but then you like wait a month or two, maybe 3 months for drivers and software updates to mature with the game. So then you know once that time passes, the game is playing just like everything else under the sun. So yeah, really good graphics card for that price point. Then you get to like the 800, the 850, like $1,000 price point. You have the 4080 Super, which got recently released. And you have the 700 XTX. You can choose whichever one you want. I think both of them are pretty comparable. Again, more price performance oriented. You get the 8 gigabytes extra VRAM with the 700 XTX. More power hungry than the 4080 Super, and you don't necessarily have the same, I guess, how you say it, feature set. But I think you get a 700 XTX again, a step above the 700 XT for not that much more money. Maybe $150 depending on model for model you're looking at. Maybe $200 on the higher end. 700 XTX is a card that's legitimately you can throw in your system and it'll last you 8 years, no problem. Like you would have to worry about your hard drives dying or something like that. Your cooler not working anymore before you have to worry about the graphics card, I guess, not necessarily giving you the frames you need. Or maybe a better situation is like the graphics card will need to have some TLC done to it, thermal paste, thermal pads changed, cleaned out before it gets to the point to where it needs to be replaced altogether. That's the level of performance that the 700 XTX has. And again, comes under $1,000, which is what a lot of people have been asking for for these higher end builds. And again, we're already in a category of like not even necessary for anyone trying to play a video game. Maybe if you have like an 8K monitor, but who's truly playing competitive games at an 8K monitor? Like, come on, no one's really doing that. And then you have the 4090. The 4090 is legitimately the equivalent of like what the Titan cards used to be. No one really should be focusing on buying these graphics cards unless you just really want to have the highest end thing out there. And I can understand the appeal of that. I personally would like to have a 4090, and if it wasn't for me having to put money into other things, I would definitely would have my 4090 fund going right now to be able to invest and put in that system. My gaming PC, I was 1500X 3D. I was going to pair that with the 4090 just in like a crap ton of storage, like 20 plus terabytes of storage in my gaming PC, just for the sake of saying I built a overkill PC. Having a 1,000 horsepower car equivalent in a PC it's fun, for lack of better. So there's nothing wrong with that. But again, already in the realm of overkill, if I never have a 4090, I won't cry about it. I won't bad eye. I won't lose sleep over it because I don't need it. Realistically, I probably fall in that category of I don't need anything more than a 2080 as far as gaming goes. Now, when you get in my other workloads, since I make videos and like other things, it would be nice to have more than 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I'm making this video, recording it on a 3090 right now on my workstation. I would like to get a better 30 graphics card to edit videos on the 3090, but a 3090 is perfectly fine for my use cases. As far as gaming goes, a 3090 will probably be fine for that as well, even when I will eventually upgrade my monitors. So technically, I know for me, anything beyond a 4070 Super is really overkill, and that graphics card can be had right now for 600, 700 bucks, right? So I think I would say like I'm maybe a little more particular about that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, it really does not matter a hill of beans. So again, I've just gone through from like again $300 all the way up to $2,000 and named a graphics card that is available right now that you can buy that you should have no problems with. Now the 4090 might be the only exception for a lot of other external reasons, but again, the that sort of category that I don't understand why people focus on the 4090 not being available right now and see that as a problem, because no one needs that graphics card. Like I said, the buck should really stop with the 700 XT. Everything beyond that is just icing on the cake as far as good gaming performance goes, because these graphics cards are just phenomenal at this point. The performance that we're getting and the actual graphical fidelity they're able to give us. One of the things that you'll hear a lot of people complain about is that the sub $300 GPU categories doesn't exist anymore, and that we should have more performance oriented graphics cards in this price category. And I really think we already have that. We just have to look at the used market. Now, some people say, "Oh, I shouldn't have to buy a used graphics card to be able to get good performance under $300." Well, I don't necessarily say why that's a end all be all. That has to be like, is that like a constitutional right that you should be able to have a graphics card under $300 brand spanking new? I can name a bunch of hobbies and other things to spend money on where it's just commonplace that under a certain price point you just look at buying used. Cars are a great example. If you're buying like a project car, no one expects to be able to buy a brand new project car, a brand new car in general for under $30,000. You know, at that point, if you want to buy a project car, whether it's for just weekend cruising, you want to go into like drifting or drag racing, time attack, you buy a used car. Now, maybe a car isn't the best example, but I can think of a lot of other hobbies that people will get into where buying used parts or used components, whatever it might be, just makes more sense. Sneakerheads, they buy used shoes, technically secondhand shoes, all the time. The secondhand market is what makes the sneakerhead community a thing. You can get really good deals that way. My dad really enjoys playing golf. He could have bought a cheaper set of brand new golf clubs, but the value was to be had just buying a used set of golf clubs that someone was selling at a secondhand market. That's where he was getting better quality things. And should he be able to buy a set of golf clubs for that same price for same performance level? Well, yes and no. But again, at that point in the weeds, you're kind of really splitting hairs on if that is really logically feasible. Now, I'm not a really big golf expert. I'm taking my dad's word on it, but he says for the price that he paid for his golf clubs, buying used just made more sense. And let me tell you, it was definitely more than $1,000. Where like buying that used set of golf clubs still made more sense. So when you put that in perspective, having to look at the used market for anything under $300, really at the end of the day, isn't that big of a deal. And if you're shopping for $300 graphics cards, you're probably either really price performance oriented, where you're willing to make sacrifices, or it's your first gaming PC, or you're very relatively young, you don't necessarily have that much disposable income. So the fact that you don't have the latest and greatest really isn't that big of an issue to you. This is going to be more so of like, I'm going from integrated graphics on a school laptop or a Chromebook to actually being able to play video games on a dedicated graphics card type of experience. The biggest experience I had as far as my game play changing, as far as getting into graphically intensive stuff, was when I bought my first graphics card. I went from a integrated graphics on a Pentium processor on an old Lenovo laptop from 2012 to a 650 Ti. Had 1 GB of VRAM, but I went from PlanetSide 2 at 4 to 8 frames a second, maybe 11 frames here and there if I had a good day, to 40 frames, 50 frames a second, sometimes 60 frames depending on how big the fight was. And I probably could have gotten better if I wasn't on FX CPU. That was like the biggest change I would see. And I don't think I would really experience a similar change unless I went from like an entry-level graphics card to a 4090 level graphics card a couple generations down the line. That's the only way I could really replicate that same kind of like Nirvana, I entered Narnia for the first time experience when it comes to gaming. So when you're in that kind of price point, no one cares if you're buying a used graphics card. You're coming from literally nothing, and it's going to bring you into the gaming experience. Does it really make that much sense to buy a brand new graphics card if you're really just getting right into gaming? I mean, maybe, but you don't even necessarily know if this is going to be a hobby that you're going to want to stick with. I was able to buy recently a 2080 Ti for $230. Needed some TLC, but it was still a fully functioning card. Technically, all I had to do was just replace the thermal paste and it would have been fine, but I decided to install a Kraken G12 and put an AIO on there, so it's a hybrid card now. I was able to get a 3080 for mid 300s. After taxes and shipping, it came out to just around $400. That was for a hybrid card though from EVGA, so it has better cooling than your standard 3080s out there. And the only issue that it had was that the pump was a little bit loud. Now I'm going to be doing some modifications to it to be able to get more performance, but also it's just, I think it would make for a good video as well. But again, these deals are to be had on a regular basis. 3080s can be had and are selling for under $400 right now. 2080 Ti's are selling for under $250 right now. I'm evidence of that. Now, will they require some TLC? Sure, but I'm sure if you look long enough, you look hard enough, you'll be able to find that one listing, that one auction where you get basically like new or very good quality that it needs no TLC plug and play graphics card for the price point that just really shines. It just takes a little bit more time, but that's with anything you're buying used. If we look back, really, if you look back, was were $300 graphics cards really as good as what we really thought they were? Um, and like I said, maybe for additional, if you need that peace of mind, maybe just save the additional $20, $30 to get a 6700 XT. Like I said, maybe that just makes more sense. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion on it. But the real thing people are complaining about is the fact that they can't get their brand new shiny NVIDIA graphics cards that is like the cream of the crop, the Halo product, available right now today for $1,000 or whatever the price point is they feel is justifiable to where it's more than what the average Joe can afford, but I can afford it if I want to, so I can always ensure that I have it. You know, whatever I pay for my last flagship, I want to be able to pay for the new flagship, and you know, it should just be as simple as that. I should always just be able to go from highest end graphics card to highest end graphics card without investing any more money into it. And unfortunately, guys, that's not how this hobby works. Uh, it is as simple as that. And the same could be said for a lot of other hobbies. You know, again, I'm going to make an example of cars, but you know, as the car industry changes, things are just going to get more and more expensive, especially when you're looking at Halo products. The same is with graphics cards. I mean, the GPU, it could really be changed its name to General Processing Unit because the things that they're able to do now is definitely just more than, it's definitely way more than just rendering graphics for your video games. You know, the amount of like different marketplaces that and sectors that GPUs can be used in is vastly bigger than what they were back in 2014, 10 years ago. The overall sophistication on the software and hardware and architectural side of the graphics cards is beyond what I think most people could even conceive 10 years ago. You know, maybe the writing was on the wall if you're like really looking at like high-end server, supercomputer hardware space back then, but for me, the average gamer, I didn't even think frame generation was even like it wasn't even a conceivable thought that I would thought would have been possible in gaming. We're not in the pandemic times anymore, and every single price point, I guess, other than the bleeding edge high end 4090s, or like the very small sub $300, but not $100, but not used, you know, that sort of price point categories. You don't necessarily have anything for that specific gamer, but in both those situations, you should be able to really be willing to spend more money to get the latest in gen, or sacrifice, I guess, on just be able to buy something used to be able to look for more value. Because again, at the sub $300, you're looking for value, so why not shop used where you get more value? It just is very counterintuitive. I think people, you know, these especially the big tech tubers are just, I guess, bored. You know, we're in very good times just to be able to enjoy building PCs, but controversy gets clicks, unfortunately, and that's just what they're going to do. They're just going to keep complaining. I don't think it's necessarily good for the community. I think, you know, giving yourself better perspective on different things, on what's actually necessary for gaming, it's going to make you healthier. And that's the whole reason I've been showing this gameplay and the footage in the background, because would you believe that all this gameplay was on a 9590, FX 9590, yeah, 10-year-old CPU paired with a 2080 Ti. And this is all running on my 4K TV. Now, I was upscaling it from 1440p to, you know, 4K, but when I compared it side to side with the eye test from native 4K to DLSS upscaled, I couldn't tell the difference. Even with my glasses on, even looking up real close, it looked the exact same. The gameplay footage speaks for itself. You know, I'm not the best Call of Duty player. I think I have a somewhat average to above average shot, but my gameplay like sense is just terrible. Which is why Shipment, I guess, is like a really good happy medium, because you can just mindlessly play Shipment and just, you know, pop off like I did. Current gen AAA games that came out. Coming out now, they run perfectly fine on 10-year-old hardware, or at least from the CPU side. And I guess what 6-year-old, 5 to 6-year-old hardware with 2080 Ti, you know. And I guarantee you, no one would have known that I was using this unless I had like an OSD showing the exact name of the CPU, the frame rates, anything like that. The gameplay looked smooth, and I was probably taking off an additional 5 to 10% of FPS on average just by recording with Shadowplay because we're using more resources. So yeah, I think that kind of proves my point. The majority of people out there are going to have way better gaming experiences because the 9590 basically bottlenecks this graphics card to the point that where it's not even a 2080 Ti anymore. Getting decent utilization, but anyone that has like a 2600X and a 3070, you should not be complaining about GPU prices, because I'm legitimately showing you right now that even on a 4K TV, you can play these late gen games, a very playable experience. Pop off, have a good time with your friends, and it's probably gonna be better than what I'm experiencing with this footage. So if you think this footage looks good, and if you didn't immediately like look at this footage and vomit, then you should not be complaining about graphics card prices. So, anyways, that's all I have for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Again, change your mindset. Just be happy with what you got. Actually, just look at you see system on your desk or underneath your desk, wherever it is, and just appreciate what you have, man. And then if you need something new, look at your price point. I guarantee you'll be able to find something brand new or used that meets your needs. It just might not be a 4090, and that should be okay. But anyways, that's all I got for this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.